The transport ship's engines hummed their final note as the docking clamps engaged with New Eden Station. Through the reinforced viewport, Dr. Marcus Chun watched another routine cargo delivery, or so he thought until Commander Hayes appeared at his laboratory door with an expression that meant trouble. "Marcus, we need to talk." Hayes stepped inside, his military bearing stiff with discomfort. "The Confederation Council has made a decision regarding the Veltar incident." Marcus's hands stilled over his research samples. 6 months had passed since the accident that killed his wife Sarah and daughter Emma during their diplomatic mission to the Veltar homeworld. 6 months since a young alien's mistake had shattered his world into pieces he couldn't fit back together. "They're not executing her," Hayes continued. "The council decided on alternative justice." Alternative? Marcus looked up from his microscope, noting how Hayes avoided his eyes. "What does that mean?" "The old laws. Recompense through service. She's being assigned to you." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the metal floor. "You're telling me they're giving me the person responsible for my family's death as some kind of what? Servant. The Veltar consider it worse than execution. Complete loss of freedom serving the species they wronged. It's supposed to be justice, Marcus. The council thought. The council thought wrong." Marcus's voice carried the edge of controlled fury that had become his constant companion. "I don't want her here. I don't want to see her face every day, knowing what she did." Hayes sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's not optional. For either of you. The treaty requires." "Damn the treaty." Marcus turned back to his samples, trying to focus on the cellular structures that made sense when nothing else did. "When does this nightmare begin?" "She arrives in 20 minutes. Transport Bay C." After Hayes left, Marcus stood alone in his laboratory, surrounded by the sterile comfort of scientific equipment and specimens from a dozen worlds. This place had become his refuge, the only space where grief didn't completely overwhelm him. Soon, even that sanctuary would be invaded by the living reminder of everything he'd lost. The walk to Transport Bay C felt like a march to his own execution. Marcus had seen Veltar before. Their crystalline skin could shift from translucent to opaque, their large eyes adapted for their world's dual suns, their movements graceful despite being nearly 7 feet tall. Beautiful in an alien way that humans found either mesmerizing or unsettling. The transport bay's doors hissed open, revealing a scene that stopped Marcus cold. The young Veltar woman knelt in the center of the bay, her hands bound with energy restraints that pulsed red against her pale blue skin. Her head was bowed, long silver hair falling like a curtain to hide her face. She wore simple gray clothing that marked her new status. 2 Confederation guards flanked her, weapons ready but not aimed. Protocol for a prisoner who was no longer quite a prisoner, but not yet free. "Dr. Chun." One guard consulted his datapad. "This is Zarakaleth of the House of Mirrors, Veltar homeworld. She's been assigned to your custody under Article 15 of the Interspecies Justice Code." Marcus approached slowly, studying the alien who had destroyed his life. She was younger than he'd expected, probably equivalent to a human in her early 20s. When she finally raised her head, her large amber eyes met his with an expression he hadn't anticipated. Not defiance or hatred, but something that looked almost like relief. "I am Zara," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species but heavily accented in standard. I know what I have done to you. I know why you must hate me." Marcus stared at her, waiting for the rage to consume him as it had every day since the accident. Instead, he felt only a hollow exhaustion. This broken creature kneeling before him didn't look like a monster. She looked like someone who had been carrying an impossible weight. "Get up," he said finally. "I don't want you kneeling." Zara rose gracefully despite the restraints, her height making her tower over Marcus's human frame. The guards moved to remove the energy bonds, and Marcus saw the way she rubbed her wrists where the restraints had left marks. Your family," she began, then stopped as if the words were too heavy to lift. "I dream of them every night. I see their faces when the containment field failed. I see." Stop! Marcus held up a hand, his voice sharp. Don't. Not here, not now. The guard captain cleared his throat. Dr. Chun, there are protocols to follow. Living arrangements, work assignments, reporting schedules. Later, Marcus turned away from Zara's haunted expression. I need time to process this. As they walked through New Eden's corridors toward his residential section, Marcus felt the stares of other colonists. News traveled fast in a small frontier community, and everyone knew about the accident, about his loss. Now they would see him with the alien responsible, trying to make sense of justice that felt like salt in an open wound. Zara followed silently, her long strides matching his pace despite the obvious effort to keep from outpacing him. When they reached his quarters, Marcus paused at the door, his hand hovering over the access panel. Inside these walls, Sarah's coffee cup still sat on the kitchen counter. Emma's drawings still decorated the refrigerator. Their belongings remained exactly as they'd left them 6 months ago, a shrine to his inability to let go. Now he was bringing their killer into this sacred space. The door slid open, and Marcus stepped inside, feeling Zara's presence behind him like a weight pressing down on his shoulders. The first 3 days passed in careful silence. Marcus assigned Zara a small storage room that he hastily converted into basic living quarters, complete with a simple bed and minimal furnishings. She accepted the space without complaint, though he noticed how she spent most of her time standing by the single small window, gazing out at New Eden's artificial sky. Marcus tried to maintain his routine. Laboratory work from dawn until late evening, meals eaten in solitude, restless sleep filled with dreams of his family. But Zara's presence changed everything. He found himself listening for her footsteps, noting when she moved through the common areas, aware of her alien grace even when he couldn't see her. On the 4th morning, he found her in his kitchen, standing perfectly still beside the coffee maker. She hadn't touched anything, but her large amber eyes were fixed on Sarah's cup with an intensity that made Marcus's chest tighten. You can move it, he said quietly. If you need to use the kitchen. Zara turned to him, and he saw something in her expression that surprised him. Not just sadness, but understanding. This was hers. Sarah Chun, xenolinguist, age 34. She studied our language forms. Her research papers were beautiful. Marcus felt his breath catch. You read her work? After the accident. I wanted to understand who I had. Zara's voice faltered. I learned everything I could about your family. Sarah was brilliant. Your daughter Emma loved drawing pictures of different worlds. She wanted to be an explorer like her parents. The simple facts, spoken in Zara's musical accent, hit harder than any accusation could have. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, suddenly feeling the weight of months of suppressed grief. Why? The word came out rougher than he intended. Why did you access our facility that day? Zara's crystalline skin shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of distress Marcus recognized from his xenobiology studies. I was young, foolish. I wanted to prove myself to the diplomatic corps, to show I could handle advanced technology. She wrapped her arms around herself. The containment protocols on your world were different from ours. I thought I understood them, but when I tried to demonstrate our crystal resonance techniques, the field collapsed. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the official reports. 37 people were in that section when the containment breach occurred. 37 people who trusted us, who welcomed us as friends. Zara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The radiation exposure. Your family was closest to the core when it happened. They died trying to help others evacuate. Marcus opened his eyes to find Zara watching him with an expression of such raw pain that it momentarily displaced his own anguish. On Veltar, we have a saying, the guilty must carry the weight of stars. I have carried 37 stars since that day, but yours, your family's stars burn brightest. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Marcus studied this alien woman who had become his unwilling charge, seeing past her otherworldly features to something achingly familiar, the hollow look of someone who had lost everything that mattered. The council wanted to execute you, he said. Why did they choose this instead? Zara's laugh held no humor. Because my family has influence. Because war between our species would have been worse than individual justice. And because, she hesitated, because they knew this would be a different kind of death. Among my people, to serve another species, to lose our freedom, it is considered the ultimate shame. And yet you seem relieved. I am. The admission seemed to surprise them both. Death would have been easy. This gives me the chance to try to balance the scales, even if it takes the rest of my life. Marcus found himself studying her face, noting the fine patterns of crystalline formation along her cheekbones, the way her silver hair caught the artificial light. Beautiful and alien, but her pain was startlingly human. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to live with you here, seeing you every day, being reminded. I know. Zara moved carefully toward the kitchen exit, giving him space. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But perhaps we can find a way to exist together that honors their memory. After she left, Marcus stood alone in his kitchen, staring at Sarah's coffee cup. For the first time since the accident, he considered moving it. Not to forget, but because keeping it there felt like preserving pain instead of preserving love. That evening, Marcus found Zara on the small balcony outside his quarters, her tall frame silhouetted against New Eden's artificial sunset. She held something in her hands, a small device that projected holographic images into the air before her. What is that? He asked, stepping outside. Zara startled, quickly moving to shut off the device. Forgive me. I did not mean to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. I just wondered. She hesitated, then reactivated the device. The hologram sprang to life, detailed, three-dimensional images of his family. Sarah laughing at some joke, Emma chasing a butterfly through a field of blue grass from some alien world, both of them together reading a book under Earth's sun. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Where did you get these? From the diplomatic archives. Your family's mission reports included personal logs, recreational recordings. Zara's voice was gentle. I watched them sometimes. I wanted to see them as they lived, not just as they died. The images cycled through moments Marcus had forgotten, Sarah's excitement over a new linguistic discovery, Emma's wonder at her first view of space through a transport window, quiet family dinners filled with laughter and love. They were more than memories. They were glimpses of joy that the accident hadn't destroyed. They look happy, Zara observed quietly. They were. Marcus found himself sitting down beside her, his eyes fixed on the holograms. Sarah loved her work, loved discovering new ways that different species communicated. Emma was curious about everything. She asked a million questions every day. She asked me about Veltar crystal singing, Zara said softly. In the facility before. She wanted to know if we really could make music with our skin. Marcus turned to look at her, surprised. She talked to you? For maybe 2 minutes. She was so excited to meet a real Veltar. She said her daddy was going to teach her about alien biology when she got older. Zara's crystalline skin shimmered with tears that caught the artificial light like liquid diamonds. She was not afraid of me. She was delighted. The weight of that simple word, delighted, settled over Marcus like a revelation. Emma had died as she lived, open to wonder, unafraid of difference. The thought hurt, but it also offered something he hadn't felt in months. A connection to who his daughter had truly been, rather than just the victim she had become in his memories. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the holographic memories dance in the evening air, two broken souls finding unexpected solace in shared grief. 2 weeks into their strange coexistence, Marcus made a decision that surprised them both. He invited Zara to work with him in his laboratory. You have advanced degrees in crystalline biology, he said over breakfast, consulting her file on his datapad. Your people's understanding of mineral-based life forms is centuries ahead of human research. Zara looked up from her simple meal, amber eyes wide with surprise. You would trust me with your work? I need the help, Marcus said honestly. And you need something to do besides stare out windows and watch old holograms. He paused, then added more quietly. Besides, Sarah would have loved your insights. She always said science was meant to be shared. The laboratory became their neutral ground. Working side by side, Marcus found himself fascinated by Zara's unique perspective on biological systems. Her crystalline nature gave her an intuitive understanding of mineral-based organisms that complemented his more traditional training. "Look at this," Zara said one afternoon, adjusting the microscope's crystalline enhancement lens, a Veltar innovation that revealed structures invisible to standard human equipment. The silicon-based organisms from Kepler 442b aren't just alive, they're communicating through resonant frequencies. Marcus leaned over to look, and for a moment, he forgot about everything except the wonder of discovery. That's impossible. Silicon-based life forms don't have the neural complexity for not neural communication, harmonic communication. Zara's excitement was infectious, her skin shifting to a brighter, more translucent blue. They're singing to each other, Marcus. Entire colonies coordinating through vibration patterns. The use of his first name struck them both at the same moment. Zara's skin darkened with embarrassment, but Marcus found he didn't mind. Somewhere in the pursuit of scientific truth, they had become colleagues rather than captor and prisoner. "Show me how to isolate the frequency patterns," he said, and was rewarded with a smile that transformed Zara's alien features into something genuinely beautiful. Their breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Working together, they had developed a technique for communicating with silicon-based life forms through controlled resonance, a discovery that could revolutionize xenobiology. Marcus found himself staying late in the lab not because he was avoiding his empty quarters, but because the work genuinely excited him for the first time since the accident. "We should publish this," he said one evening as they documented their findings. Joint authorship. The Confederation Journal of Xenobiology would. Zara's hands stilled over her notes. "I cannot publish scientific work. I am not a free citizen. Any discoveries I make belong to you by law." Marcus frowned. "That's ridiculous. This is your work as much as mine. The law is clear. I am property, not a person, under Confederation justice statutes." Her voice carried a bitter edge. "My thoughts, my innovations, even my life, all belong to you now." The casual mention of ownership made Marcus uncomfortable in ways he hadn't expected. "I don't think of you as property, but that is what I am." Zara set down her writing instrument and looked at him directly. "You could command me to do anything, and I would have no legal right to refuse. You could sell me to another human, and I would have no choice but to go. You could." She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air between them. "I would never," Marcus began, but Zara held up a hand. "I know. You are not that kind of person. But the law says you could, and that makes all the difference." She turned back to her notes, but her movements had lost their earlier enthusiasm. "Perhaps it is better this way. I have no right to the respect that comes with scientific recognition." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about justice and punishment, about the difference between what was legal and what was right. The Confederation's system of recompense through service was ancient, designed for a time when different species barely understood each other. But Zara wasn't some primitive being to be owned and commanded. She was brilliant, insightful, and despite everything, becoming something he hadn't expected. A friend. The next morning, he found her on the balcony again, watching New Eden's sunrise with an expression of deep melancholy. "What do you miss most?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "Flying," she said without hesitation. "On Veltar, we can achieve limited flight through controlled density shifts in our crystalline structure. It requires perfect harmony with atmospheric conditions, but when it works—" She smiled, the first truly joyful expression he had seen from her. "It is like dancing with the sky itself." Marcus tried to imagine it. This tall, graceful being moving through alien skies with the same natural beauty she brought to everything else. "Could you do it here? If the atmospheric conditions were right. The gravity is wrong. The air density is different. And besides," her smile faded, "slaves do not fly. It would be inappropriate. The word slave hit Marcus like a physical blow. In all their weeks together, neither of them had used that term, preferring euphemisms like assignment and service. But that's what this was, wasn't it? Slavery dressed up in legal language and diplomatic necessity. Zara, he said carefully, what if I told you that while you're here, while you're with me, you don't have to think of yourself as a slave? She turned to look at him, hope and skepticism warring in her amber eyes. What do you mean? I mean that in my quarters, in my lab, in my presence, you are my colleague. He searched for the right word. My friend. What you do, how you spend your time, what you say, that's your choice, not my command. Tears gathered in Zara's eyes, those crystalline drops that caught light like tiny prisms. You do not understand what you are offering. Freedom, even limited freedom, is not something humans give to Veltar. Our species have been enemies for too long. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus said. Maybe it's time for someone to break the cycle. Zara stared at him for a long moment, then did something that took his breath away. She reached out and gently took his hand in hers. Her skin was warm despite its crystalline appearance, and he could feel a faint vibration, the natural resonance that her people used to communicate emotion. Thank you, she whispered. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever. As they stood together on the balcony, Marcus realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. The angry, grieving widower who had wanted nothing more than to hate this alien woman was gone, replaced by someone who was beginning to understand that healing sometimes came from the most unexpected places. But New Eden was a small colony, and news traveled fast. Within days, word spread that Dr. Chan was treating his Veltar assignment more like a partner than a prisoner. Some colonists approved, seeing it as a sign of strength and forgiveness. Others whispered that he was betraying his family's memory, that grief had made him weak. Marcus tried to ignore the gossip, but he couldn't ignore the official communication that arrived from Confederation headquarters 3 days later. Commissioner Walsh's face filled his wall screen, wearing an expression of bureaucratic concern. Dr. Chan, I've received reports about irregularities in your handling of the Veltar prisoner. While we appreciate your dedication to rehabilitation, we must remind you that maintaining proper boundaries is essential for the success of the recompense program. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Zara is contributing valuable scientific work. She's more than paying her debt to society. That's not the point. The Veltar government specifically requested this punishment because they believed service to humans would be a source of ongoing shame for the prisoner. If she appears to be enjoying herself, the justice system loses its deterrent effect. So you want me to make her miserable? To treat her badly? We want you to maintain appropriate distance. Remember, Dr. Chun, this arrangement is meant to serve justice, not provide companionship for your grief. The connection ended, leaving Marcus staring at a blank screen. The message was clear. His growing friendship with Zara was being seen as a problem by people who had never met her, never seen her brilliance or her genuine remorse. That evening, Zara approached him with a worried expression. I have heard the colonists talking. They say I am not being punished properly. They say you are too kind. Marcus looked up from his dinner, noting the careful distance she maintained, the space of a servant, not a friend. Since when do you care what they think? Since their disapproval might cause problems for you. Zara's voice was quiet but firm. I do not want my presence to damage your standing in the community. You have lost too much already. Let me worry about my standing, Marcus said, standing and moving closer to her. The only opinion that matters to me is whether you think we're doing the right thing. Zara's amber eyes searched his face. I think, she said slowly, that for the first time since the accident, I feel like a person instead of a mistake, and I think your family would be proud of the man you are choosing to be. The words hit Marcus with unexpected force, because he realized they were true. Sarah would have embraced Zara's brilliant mind without hesitation. Emma would have been fascinated by her alien grace and kind heart. They would have seen what he was beginning to see. Not the person who had accidentally caused their deaths, but the woman who was helping him remember how to live. But as they stood together in the growing darkness of his quarters, Neither of them could have predicted how much their unusual bond was about to be tested. The crisis began with a simple message that arrived during Marcus's morning coffee routine. Commissioner Walsh's face appeared on his communication screen, but this time her expression was grave rather than merely bureaucratic. Dr. Chun, we have a situation. The Veltar delegation has arrived on New Eden for an unscheduled inspection of their citizens' punishment status. They'll be arriving at your facility within the hour. Marcus nearly dropped his coffee cup. What kind of inspection? They want to verify that appropriate justice is being served. Dr. Chun, I need to be clear. If they determine that the prisoner has been treated too leniently, they may demand her return to Veltar for execution. The diplomatic implications. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at the blank screen with growing dread. He found Zara in the laboratory, carefully cataloging their latest research samples. When he explained the situation, her face went pale, her crystalline skin shifting to an almost transparent white. They cannot find me like this, she said, gesturing to her simple but comfortable clothing, the small personal items she had gathered over the weeks. If they see that I am content, they will demand my death to preserve family honor. What do they expect to see? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. A broken creature. Someone suffering appropriately for the shame I brought to our people. Zara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she began removing the small decorations she had added to her workspace. They will expect me to be wearing punishment garments, to show signs of physical labor, to demonstrate that every day with you has been agony. Marcus watched her transform herself back into the hollow-eyed prisoner who had first arrived weeks ago, and felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. No, I won't let them see you like that. You do not understand, Zara said urgently. These are not diplomats or bureaucrats. This is my family. My father, Kaleth the Crystal Singer, leads the House of Mirrors. My brother Velnor commands their military forces. They arranged this punishment instead of execution, but if they believe it has been ineffective, then we make them believe it's working, Marcus said grimly. What would convince them? Zara stared at him. You would do that? Pretend to mistreat me? To save your life? Yes. Marcus had never been more certain of anything. Tell me what they need to see. The next hour was the most difficult of Marcus's life. Together, they staged a scene of appropriate punishment. Zara in rough, uncomfortable clothing, her quarters stripped of any comfort, her posture submissive and defeated. Marcus practiced speaking to her with cold authority, giving orders that made his stomach turn even though they both knew it was an act. When the Veltar delegation arrived, Marcus almost gasped. Zara's family were imposing figures even by Veltar standards. Tall, elegant beings whose crystalline skin seemed to capture and amplify light. Her father's presence filled the room with an almost musical resonance, while her brother's military bearing radiated controlled power. Human Chun, her father spoke in accented standard, his voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. We come to inspect the punishment of our daughter. Of course, Marcus replied, falling into the role he had rehearsed. The prisoner has been assigned appropriate tasks and accommodations. Zara knelt in the center of the room, her head bowed, every line of her body conveying defeat and shame. Marcus had to force himself not to react when her father's gaze swept over her with apparent satisfaction. Show us her living conditions, Velnor commanded. Marcus led them to the sparse room they had hastily prepared, noting how Zara's father examined every detail. The hard sleeping surface, the lack of personal items, the small window that barely admitted light. And her work, Kaleth inquired. Basic laboratory maintenance. Cleaning equipment, organizing samples. Nothing that would utilize her advanced education. Marcus hated every word he spoke, especially when he saw the brief flash of pain in Zara's eyes. The inspection continued for 2 hours. Marcus watched Zara perform menial tasks while her family observed, their expressions growing more satisfied with each demonstration of her apparent misery. When Kaleth questioned her directly in their musical language, her responses were so subdued that even Marcus could hear the defeat in her tone. It appears the punishment is effective, Kaleth finally announced. Our daughter learns the proper price of her failure. But as they prepared to leave, Velnor's sharp eyes caught something Marcus had missed. A small holographic projector partially hidden behind laboratory equipment. With growing horror, Marcus realized it was the device Zara used to watch recordings of his family. What is this? Velnor activated the projector, and Sarah's laughing face filled the air. The silence that followed was deafening. Kaletha's crystalline features hardened into an expression of such fury that the air itself seemed to vibrate with his anger. You allow her to watch recordings of her victims? His voice rose to a harmonic pitch that made Marcus's ears ring. You permit her to find entertainment in their deaths? No! Marcus stepped forward, abandoning all pretense. She watches them to remember, to honor their memory. Silence. Kaletha's attention fixed on his daughter, who remained kneeling but had raised her head to meet his gaze. Explain yourself. Zara spoke in their language, her voice growing stronger with each word. Marcus couldn't understand what she was saying, but he could hear the passion in it, the conviction. Her father's expression grew darker with each syllable. She says, Kaleth turned to Marcus, his voice dripping with disgust, that she has found peace in her punishment, that the human has shown her kindness, that she has learned to value the lives she destroyed by seeing them as they lived. Is that so wrong? Marcus demanded, his own anger finally breaking free. Is it wrong that she's learned compassion instead of just suffering? It is not justice. Velnor stepped forward, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. Justice demands pain equal to the pain she caused. If she has found happiness in her punishment, then the punishment has failed. The only thing that has failed, Marcus said, moving to stand beside Zara, is your understanding of what justice actually means. The confrontation that followed would be remembered on New Eden for years to come. Kaleth demanded Zara's immediate return to Veltar for execution. Marcus refused to release her. Velnor threatened to take her by force. And through it all, Zara remained silent, watching the argument that would determine her fate. Finally, she spoke. Rising to her full height, she addressed her father in standard so that Marcus could understand every word. I will not go, she said simply. I choose to stay. Kaletha's expression shifted through surprise, fury, and something that might have been grief. You would choose exile? You would abandon your family, your world, your very identity for this human. Zara looked at Marcus, then back at her father. I choose to stay with someone who has taught me that redemption is possible, that mistakes, even terrible ones, do not have to define us forever, that love can grow in the most unlikely places. The word love hung in the air like a revelation that surprised everyone present, including Zara herself. Marcus felt his breath catch as he realized the truth of what she had said, and what it meant. Kaletha's crystalline skin shifted through colors Marcus had never seen before, expressing emotions that human eyes could barely comprehend. Then you are no longer my daughter, he said finally. You are nothing to me. He turned to leave, but Velnor remained, his hand still on his weapon. If she stays, he said to Marcus, she stays as your responsibility. Any crime she commits, any shame she brings, it falls on you. I accept that responsibility, Marcus said without hesitation. After the Veltar delegation left, Marcus and Zara stood alone in the laboratory, the weight of what had just happened settling around them like dust after an explosion. Did you mean it? Marcus asked quietly. What you said about love? Zara's amber eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked completely unguarded. I meant it. I love you, Marcus Chin. I love your dedication to truth, your capacity for forgiveness, your strength in the face of loss. I love the way you see the universe as something to be understood rather than conquered. Marcus reached out and took her hands, feeling the warm vibration of her emotional resonance. I love you too, he said, amazed by the truth of it. I don't know when it happened, or how, but somewhere between hating you and working with you and watching you honor my family's memory, I fell in love with you. They held each other in the laboratory where they had discovered so much more than new forms of life. They had discovered that healing could come from the most unexpected sources, and that love could bloom even in the deepest grief. But their declaration of love was only the beginning of their challenges, not the end. The aftermath of the Veltar delegation's visit rippled through New Eden like shockwaves from a seismic event. Within hours, news of Zara's defection from her family and Marcus's public defense of her had reached every corner of the colony. The small community that had been content to whisper about their unusual arrangement now found itself divided into clear factions. Commander Hayes appeared at Marcus's quarters the next morning, his expression grim. "We have a problem. 3 different Confederation Council members have contacted me in the last 12 hours. The Veltar government is claiming that Zara has violated the terms of her punishment by refusing repatriation. They're demanding her extradition." "On what grounds?" Marcus asked, though he was still processing the larger implications of Zara's choice to stay. "Breach of justice protocols. According to Veltar law, accepting punishment means accepting all aspects of that punishment, including termination when the punishing party deems it appropriate." Hayes rubbed his temples. "Marcus, they're threatening to withdraw from the Kepler Accords if we don't comply. That would destabilize trade relationships across 3 systems." Zara emerged from the kitchen where she had been preparing breakfast. A domestic scene that felt surreal given the political crisis swirling around them. "Commander Hayes," she said formally, "I understand the position this places New Eden in. If my presence threatens the colony's welfare—" "No." Marcus's voice was firm. "You're not going anywhere. We'll find another solution." Hayes studied them both with the tired eyes of a man who had seen too many impossible situations. "The hearing is set for next week. Confederation Tribunal with representatives from Earth, Veltar, and 3 neutral systems. They'll determine whether Zara's punishment was completed according to treaty obligations." After Hayes left, Marcus found himself pacing the quarters like a caged animal. The reality of their situation was becoming clear. Loving Zara wasn't just a personal choice anymore. It was a political act that could have consequences far beyond their own lives. "You should let me go," Zara said quietly from where she sat by the window. "I have already caused enough damage. I will not let my selfishness destroy innocent lives." Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Is that what you think this is? Selfish? What else can it be?" Zara's crystalline skin had taken on a dull, muted tone that Marcus had learned indicated deep sadness. "I killed your family, destroyed your life, and now I am asking you to risk everything for me. How is that not the height of selfishness?" Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Look at me, Zara." When she met his eyes, he continued, "You didn't ask me for anything. I chose this. I chose to see you as more than your worst moment. I chose to work with you, to trust you, to care about you. And I'm choosing to fight for you now because that's what love means. Protecting what matters most." Tears gathered in her amber eyes, those crystalline drops that caught the light like liquid jewels. "But the cost will be worth it if it means we can build something better. Sarah used to say that change only happens when someone is brave enough to take the first step. Maybe this is our first step." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Elena Vasquez, New Eden's chief counselor, and one of the few colonists who had openly supported their relationship. Her dark eyes were troubled as she entered their quarters. "I've been monitoring the colony's communication channels," she said without preamble. "There's been a development you need to know about. A group of Earth colonists have filed a formal complaint with the Confederation, claiming that your fraternization with Zara dishonors the memory of human victims of the accident." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Who filed the complaint?" "James Morrison, whose brother died in the facility breach. Sarah Chen's research partner, Dr. Williams, and 12 others who lost family or friends." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, they're not just upset, they're organizing. They want Zara sent back to Veltar, and they want you removed from your position for failure to maintain appropriate professional boundaries." The weight of betrayal hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dr. Williams had worked closely with Sarah for 3 years. Morrison had been a friend, someone who had helped Marcus through the darkest days after the accident. Now they were using his grief and Sarah's memory as weapons against the woman he loved. "There's more," Elena continued reluctantly. "They've requested permission to address the tribunal directly. They want to testify that allowing Zara to remain on New Eden would be a mockery of justice and an insult to the human victims." Zara stood abruptly, her tall frame trembling with emotion. "Then it is decided. I cannot fight both your government and your people. I cannot ask you to stand against everyone you have ever known." "You're not asking," Marcus said, rising to face her. "I'm choosing, and I'm not the only one. Elena, tell her about the other petition." Elena smiled for the first time since entering their quarters. 43 colonists have signed a counterpetition supporting your right to make your own choices about justice and healing. They argue that forcing you to hate Zara would be just another form of tyranny, and that true justice should allow for the possibility of redemption. 43 people who barely know me?" Zara whispered, wonder evident in her voice. 43 people who have watched you over the past 2 months, Elena corrected. They've seen you working in the lab, contributing to the colony's scientific advancement. They've noticed that you help elderly Mrs. Patterson with her garden, that you volunteer at the school to teach children about crystalline biology. They've seen you honor Marcus's family by becoming the kind of person they would have admired. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for his neighbors, people he had barely spoken to since the accident who were now willing to stand up for love over vengeance. But their support would mean nothing if the tribunal ruled against them. "What are our legal options?" he asked Elena. "Limited. The justice protocols are ancient and rarely challenged. But I've been researching precedents, and there is one possible avenue." Elena pulled out her datapad and scrolled through legal documents. Article 27 of the Interspecies Justice Code allows for alternative resolution when both the injured party and the serving party agree to modified terms. "What does that mean in practical terms?" Zara asked. "It means that if Marcus, as the primary injured party, formally declares that justice has been served and requests modification of your punishment, the tribunal must consider it. The catch is that it requires unanimous consent from all affected parties, including the Veltar government." Marcus felt hope flicker in his chest. "And if they refuse? Then we're back to the original terms. Either Zara returns to Veltar for execution, or New Eden faces diplomatic consequences that could affect thousands of lives." That evening, Marcus and Zara walked through New Eden's central plaza, noting how conversations stopped when they passed, how some colonists offered supportive smiles while others turned away in disapproval. The community that had been Marcus's home for 5 years was now divided because of choices he had made, love he had chosen to embrace. "I keep thinking about Emma," Marcus said as they paused beside the memorial fountain dedicated to colonists lost in service. "She was so excited to meet you that day at the facility. She asked me 100 questions about Veltar biology on the transport ride there." Zara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "She asked me if we really could sing with our skin. I demonstrated for her, just a simple harmony, nothing complex. She clapped her hands and said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. She would have loved having you as a friend," Marcus said, the certainty of it settling deep in his bones. "Sarah would have insisted on collaborating with you on linguistic research. They both would have seen what I see. Someone worth knowing, worth caring about, worth fighting for. Even knowing that I was responsible for their deaths?" Marcus turned to face her fully, his hands framing her crystalline features. "Especially knowing that they believed in second chances, in the power of redemption, in the possibility that people could grow beyond their mistakes. Loving you doesn't dishonor their memory, it fulfills it." The tribunal hearing was scheduled for the following week, but Marcus had one more card to play. That night, he contacted every major news outlet in the Confederation, requesting interviews about the case. If public opinion was going to play a role in the decision, he wanted people to hear their story directly. The interviews were broadcast across 12 systems, reaching millions of beings from dozens of species. Marcus spoke about loss and healing, about choosing love over hatred, about the possibility of justice that built rather than destroyed. Zara talked about carrying the weight of her mistakes, about finding unexpected grace in service, about learning that redemption was possible even for those who had caused unforgivable harm. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from across the galaxy. Humans who had lost loved ones to accidents and chosen forgiveness, Veltar who believed their justice system had become too rigid, members of other species who saw Marcus and Zara's relationship as a symbol of hope for interspecies cooperation. But there were also messages of condemnation, threats, and demands that Marcus honor his family's memory by rejecting the woman who had killed them. The galaxy, it seemed, was as divided as New Eden itself. 3 days before the hearing, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Commissioner Walsh arrived unannounced, her usual bureaucratic composure replaced by something approaching desperation. "Dr. Chun, I need you to understand the full scope of what's at stake here," she said, declining his offer of coffee and pacing his small living room. "The Veltar have made it clear that they will withdraw from the Confederation entirely if this tribunal doesn't rule in their favor. We're talking about the collapse of trade agreements worth billions of credits, the loss of technological exchanges that benefit every member species, potentially even military conflicts over resource rights." Marcus listened quietly, noting how Zara had positioned herself near the window, close enough to hear, far enough away to avoid seeming to eavesdrop. "I know you love her," Walsh continued, "and I respect that this is personal for you, but sometimes individual desires have to be weighed against the greater good. Is your relationship worth destabilizing the entire Confederation? Is maintaining an unjust system worth preserving?" Marcus countered. "If the Confederation can only survive by condemning people to slavery or death for accidents, maybe it doesn't deserve to survive." Walsh stared at him as if he had suddenly started speaking an alien language. That's an incredibly naive perspective, Dr. Chun. The world doesn't run on idealism." "No," Marcus agreed, "but maybe it should start to." After Walsh left, Zara approached him with an expression of such love and sadness that it took his breath away. "You would really let the Confederation fall for me?" she asked. "I would let an unjust system change for us," Marcus corrected. "For everyone like us. For the possibility that someday, love might be stronger than law, understanding stronger than tradition, hope stronger than fear." Zara kissed him then, a gentle meeting of lips that tasted like starlight and possibilities. When they broke apart, Marcus saw his own determination reflected in her amber eyes. "Then we fight," she said simply. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The night before the tribunal, Marcus couldn't sleep. He found himself in his laboratory, surrounded by the research he and Zara had completed together, looking at discoveries that might never see publication if she was forced to leave. Their work on silicon-based communication had implications far beyond xenobiology. It suggested new possibilities for interspecies understanding, new ways for different forms of life to connect across the vast differences that separated them. Zara found him there in the early hours of morning, standing before their shared microscope like a priest before an altar. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, moving to stand beside him, "I want you to know that these months with you have been the most meaningful of my life. You gave me back my sense of purpose, my belief in my own worth. You showed me that even the worst mistakes don't have to be the end of the story." Marcus turned to look at her, memorizing the way the laboratory lights caught in her crystalline skin, the gentle music of her voice, the warmth in her alien eyes that had become more familiar than his own reflection. "And you showed me that healing doesn't always look the way we expect it to," he replied. "That sometimes the person who causes our greatest pain can also become the source of our greatest joy. That love isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing a better future." They held each other in the pre-dawn darkness, two souls from different worlds who had found something worth fighting for in the space between justice and mercy, between law and love, between the weight of the past and the promise of tomorrow. The tribunal would decide their fate in a matter of hours, but Marcus knew that whatever the outcome, they had already won something precious. They had proven that understanding could bridge any distance, that compassion could heal any wound, and that love could bloom in even the most unlikely soil. The future remained unwritten, but for the first time since Sarah and Emma's death, Marcus was ready to help write it.